The ocean looked like glass stretched to infinity, reflecting a sky too perfect to be real. The kind of view that travel bloggers would caption with something like, "Grateful beyond words." Olivia would have done that if she hadn't been scrolling through her phone for the last 15 minutes, angling for the right light on her mimosa. The glass caught the sunlight just right, her manicured hand gleaming like a small advertisement for everything I could never be. Effortless, marketable, adored. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. We were 2 days into the honeymoon. Santorini. White cliffs, blue domes, all of it straight off her mood board. The kind of trip meant to be photographed, not lived. I'd thought the quiet would help us reconnect after the chaos of the wedding. Turns out quiet only amplifies what you've been pretending not to hear. She leaned on the railing, camera still in hand, and said it. Just like that, with a laugh soft enough to sound harmless. My ex would have booked the suite. I didn't flinch, didn't look up. I just smiled, a small one, like she'd made a comment about the weather. Would he now? Yeah, she said, looking over her shoulder. He always knew how to make things special. Her tone was playful, but something sharp hid beneath it. That invisible barb people use when they want to test you. See how much you'll take before you bite. I'd spent the last year pretending not to notice those little tests. This one landed clean. I set down my coffee cup, the sound neat and final against the porcelain saucer. Let me handle that, I said. She blinked, confused, then smiled like she thought I was joking. I smiled back, and for a strange second, I felt light. Not angry, not broken, just clear. That's the thing about disappointment. It's slow poison until the moment it crystallizes into certainty. And that moment, right there, was my clarity. She turned her attention back to her phone, mumbling something about a filter, while I mentally booked the earliest flight home. I already knew the password to our shared travel app. I already knew how to disappear without a fight. I'd suspected something long before the wedding. The way she lingered over old messages, laughed too loudly at comments from men she claimed were just industry friends. The way she'd compare me to them, subtle digs delivered with a smile. You're so stable, she'd say, like stability was a cardigan I'd worn too long. I thought marriage would calm her need for validation, but marriage doesn't fix vanity, it only gives it a matching monogram. The waitress came by with another bottle of champagne. Olivia perked up immediately, like she'd been unplugged and suddenly found a socket. Yes, please, she said, all charm and laughter. I gave the waitress my best polite smile, the one that hides everything, and slipped my credit card from my wallet. When she left, I took the card back and tucked it into my passport holder. Habit. I didn't know it would become symbolic in about 10 hours. Olivia looked at me, puzzled. You okay? You seem quiet. Just taking it all in, I said. That's good, she said, already swiping through her photos. You never appreciate the moment enough. She was right, in a way. I'd never been good at pretending moments were perfect when they weren't. By lunch, she'd taken 70 photos of herself and one of me, accidentally. I watched her across the table, saw the way she kept checking her notifications. Every ping from her phone made her smile a little too wide. It used to bother me. Now it fascinated me. Watching her was like watching someone rehearse being human. The afternoon dragged through overpriced cocktails, polite conversation, and the kind of sunlight that turns every flaw into something picturesque. I excused myself after dessert and took a walk down to the beach. I needed space to think, or maybe to finalize the kind of decision that only looks impulsive from the outside. The sea smelled like salt and freedom. That's the poetic version. The truth is, it smelled like sunscreen, diesel from boats, and the faint sour note of tourist money. I took off my shoes and stood there for a minute, letting the water soak my cuffs. Somewhere between the waves, I made up my mind. By the time I got back to the room, she was already posting a candid of herself, watching the sunset, tagging 3 brands and hashtagging honeymoon bliss. "Hey," she said, without looking up. "You disappeared." "Yeah," I said. "Had to make a few calls." "About what?" "Our suite." She turned, curious. "What suite?" "The one your ex would have booked." She laughed, uncertain. "You're funny." "I try." I packed while she showered. Neat, methodical, like a man checking items off a spreadsheet. Passport, wallet, charger, laptop. She didn't notice. She was too busy narrating her skincare routine to her followers. I left the hotel key on the table, next to her phone tripod. It felt poetic in a way, though I doubted she'd notice. She'd be too focused on her reflection to see the empty drawer beside the bed. At the reception desk, the clerk looked confused when I asked to check out early. "But sir, the reservation is for another 5 nights, he said. "I know," I said. "You can keep the difference." I booked the next flight to Chicago before the elevator hit the lobby floor. By the time Olivia realized I was gone, I'd already passed airport security. The flight was long, quiet. No one recognized me, which was perfect. I watched the reflection of my own expression in the darkened window and found nothing there. No rage, no heartbreak, just relief. Halfway through the flight, my phone started vibrating with messages, 10 missed calls, then 20, then a stream of texts that filled the screen like a confession typed too late. Olivia. Where are you? Olivia. Please tell me this is a joke. Olivia. Lucas, what's happening? Olivia. I'm scared. I turned off notifications. Then, because it felt symbolic, I turned off the phone entirely. When the plane touched down, I felt like I'd crossed an invisible line. The man who had boarded that flight was gone, replaced by someone quieter, sharper, colder. Someone who understood that silence could be louder than any confrontation. At home, the apartment felt strange without her clutter. Before the wedding, I'd made a copy of every key, every document. Not out of paranoia, just the habit of a man who likes backups. Now, those small precautions became the building blocks of freedom. The first thing I did was call my lawyer friend, Jeremy. "You ever filed an annulment for someone who just realized he married a marketing campaign?" He paused. "You mean fraud?" "No," I said. "Just creative advertising." We laughed. It felt good. Real laughter, not the kind you stage for photos. The papers were ready within 24 hours. I couriered them to the apartment, along with a note in my handwriting. Let's both move on, preferably in opposite directions. Before I left, I did something else, something petty and satisfying. I transferred back every cent I'd contributed to the wedding from our joint account. Then I canceled her access cards. Not dramatic, just efficient. Olivia arrived home 3 days later, according to the smart camera alert. I watched the feed from my phone, sitting in a quiet bar downtown. She walked in, saw the envelope on the counter, and froze. Then she opened it. Her expression folded in slow motion. The audio picked up her voice faintly. "You can't be serious," she whispered. I muted it. I didn't need to hear more. Later that night, she started calling again. Same pattern. First shock, then anger, then pleading. Each voicemail sounded like a scene from one of her videos, all breathy emotion and perfect phrasing. I didn't respond. I didn't block her either. Let the calls come. Let the silence answer them. That night, I sat on my couch, laptop open, watching her follower count tick down in real time. News travels fast when you live online. Someone leaked the annulment documents. Maybe her PR manager. Maybe karma. Hard to tell these days. By morning, she was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Influencer's dream marriage ends overnight. Brand partnership suspended amid scandal. The headlines had a rhythm to them, almost musical. I poured myself a cup of coffee, opened one of the articles, and smiled at the irony. For years, she'd chased the illusion of being adored. Now she had an audience again, just not the one she wanted. People think revenge is a storm. For me, it was paperwork and patience. The quiet steps that add up to something irreversible. That night I got one last message from her. Not a plea, not a threat. Just a voice note. She sounded small, stripped of all that glittering confidence. "Please, Lucas," she said. "Can we talk? I made a mistake. I love you." I didn't reply. I saved the message, though. Not out of nostalgia, more like documentation. A few days later, I saw a photo of her posted by a fan account. No makeup, no ring, just her walking alone through the airport. The comments were brutal. Sympathy was short-lived in her world. I didn't feel joy, exactly. Just completion, like closing a ledger. I took a long walk that evening, thinking about the moment on that balcony. The way she'd said it. My ex would have booked the suite. It wasn't the words that ruined us. It was the truth behind them. She never wanted a partner. She wanted an accessory. And for a while, I'd been willing to play the part. When I got home, I opened her last voicemail again, just to remind myself why I did it. Then I deleted it. Not out of forgiveness, just space management. I started sleeping better after that. I even went back to work, where my coworkers treated me like a man who'd survived something dramatic without realizing how quiet it had been. The thing about endings is that they never look cinematic in the moment. They're just small decisions made in silence. A plane ticket, a signature, a smile that hides everything. Still, sometimes, when I hear the faint hum of a phone vibrating, I think of that empty hotel room and her voice echoing through it, calling my name. It's not guilt that I feel, it's rhythm. Her sobbing calls from that suite became the soundtrack to my freedom. And though I never played them again, I could still hear the pauses between her words, the sound of a person realizing the show is over. I remember the ocean that morning, bright and endless, her reflection framed in sunlight. She looked perfect, untouchable, and I remember thinking, some people chase sunsets, others learn to leave before the light fades. That was the moment I became the latter. The morning after I left Santorini, Chicago greeted me with a sky the color of dishwater and the kind of wind that hunts for exposed skin. I stood on the curb outside O'Hare with my single carry-on, watching a gray taxi crawl toward me through a line of other gray taxis. The driver rolled down the window and called, "Where to?" in a tone that suggested life had lowered his standards to basic transportation and whatever radio station came in clearest. I gave him my address and sank into the seat like a man removing a suit of armor he never wanted to wear. I kept thinking about the hotel balcony. Every time I blinked, I saw the white rail and that perfect horizon and her hands flicking through filters like a card trick. A part of me admired the efficiency of it. Say a small thing, create a large crater. My ex would have booked the suite. Not an argument, not an accusation, just a casual verdict delivered with a half smile. That line kept replaying in my head, and with every replay I felt more certain I'd done the only thing that made sense. At home, the apartment smelled faintly of lemons and the bouquet someone forgot to throw out before we left. The flowers had sagged against the glass like party guests who stayed too long. I set my bag down in the hallway and stood there, taking stock. The couch we argued over and then bought anyway, the shelf with our framed engagement photos, her row of designer shoes lined up like parade formation. Everything so carefully curated it felt like stepping into a set. I grabbed a trash bag and let the wilted arrangement slide into it with a soft hiss. Then I checked the entry camera feed to confirm the courier schedule. 2 emails sat in my inbox. One from the process server, time-stamped for this afternoon, and one from my bank with a routine subject line that felt like a green light. Transfer complete. People assume revenge is an explosion. Mine was closer to a spreadsheet. Columns labeled time, action, outcome. I called Jeremy while the coffee machine clattered to life. "You sound cheerful," he said. Jeremy's voice always carries the calm of a man who keeps contracts for breakfast. "I'm working on it," I said. "Papers go out today?" "Already set," he said. "Annulment, not divorce, right? Your grounds are messy, but the timeline helps. Short marriage, separate finances, her public statements can be framed as misrepresentation of intent. We might not get it, but it sets tone. Tone is all I want." "You sure?" he asked. "Sometimes people do these things to force a conversation." "Conversation already happened," I said. She gave her closing remarks on a balcony. He exhaled through his nose. "Okay. My courier will text you when it's delivered." I made a second call to the travel card company. "Yes, I need to revoke an authorized user." The woman on the line asked security questions and then used the word processed in a way that felt like a gavel. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the empty side of our closet for a long minute. Olivia's space looked like a boutique showroom, color-coded, spaced out, each hanger holding a story about a night when she was adored for being expertly arranged. I wasn't angry anymore. I was an auditor cataloging a company that manufactured moments. Around noon, I walked to the corner cafe and took a table by the window. The cafe was half full, students with laptops, an older couple sharing a scone like it was an inside joke. I opened my own laptop and checked the numbers I actually get paid to care about. The markets did their usual dance. My fund's positions hummed along. The world ticked. I did an hour of work cleanly, almost gratefully. Then I opened a private browser tab and searched her name. The algorithm served me 3 fan accounts, a compilation of her wedding looks, and a gossip blog hinting at trouble. Someone had posted a photo of our hotel door with a caption, "He checked out?" The comments section used the words stunning, brutal, and inevitable as if they were compliments. I closed the tab and swallowed the last of my coffee. The courier texted at 2 p.m. Envelope dropped. I pictured the white packet on our kitchen counter, stamped with that solemn print that always makes people careful with their voices. 10 minutes later, the camera feed buzzed with motion. A neighbor walked past with a laundry basket. The world kept going. I didn't watch for Olivia's return. Watching would have made me part of the scene. Instead, I took the train to my office, a safe place for people who prefer numbers to narratives. Inside the elevator, a stranger complimented my tie. I thanked him and smiled at my reflection in the doors. I looked like a man who has his life in order, which is the funniest thing you can say about anyone. Work sharpened me. Spreadsheets don't ask why you've been quiet. They just accept your commands, turn raw inputs into shape, and never tell a story you didn't authorize. By 5:30, I had closed out an analysis and earned 5 terse emails of appreciation. I didn't care. I cared that the work had taken my mind and held it steady. On the commute home, I finally opened the camera feed. The apartment was dim except for sunset sliding across the floor. The envelope sat exactly where the courier left it. I stared at the counter for a full minute, then put away my phone and stepped off at my stop. She came back after dark. The camera pinged and, against my better judgment, I tapped. The door swung open, and there she was, sunglasses on despite the hour, hair pulled back in a ponytail that said nothing could possibly be wrong. Her rolling suitcase scuffed the entry rug. She dropped her keys into the bowl and followed the quiet like a dog following a scent. Then she saw the envelope. Olivia froze, then laughed to herself. A short, dismissive little sound like she'd found an expired coupon. She opened it, and her face emptied out by degrees. The sunglasses went on the counter. The papers trembled at the bottom edge. She folded them once, put them back in the envelope, took them out again as if the print might soften with movement. She spoke softly. I turned up the volume but kept it low. Something about hearing her voice in my own kitchen from a safe distance felt like cheating at empathy. "No," she said. "No. Lucas, come on." Her phone lit her face as she dialed me. I watched my own number ring across 2 cities. I didn't pick up. I listened to the apartment breathe. She called again, paced from the counter to the living room and back, sat on the floor, and called once more. My phone buzzed with voicemails, each one a new chapter in the same story. First confusion, then crafted outrage, then quivering remorse. I recognized the beats. I'd seen her rehearse them for brand videos about resilience and growth. She had a gift for making a script look spontaneous. I turned off the feed when she started crying, not out of sympathy, but because I wanted the reality of it to remain unobserved by me. If I watched, I would become an audience again. I wanted to be a closing credit. At midnight, I opened the bank app and tracked the last transfer. The wedding fund moving back into my account, like a ship returning to harbor. That money had once paid for gold-rimmed menus and 10 varieties of glassware. I remembered Olivia's face when the planner presented the swatches, how she stroked a napkin like it was a small animal that might love her back. The next morning, my phone surfaced 4 new alerts, one from a brand pausing their collaboration with her, a second from a gossip page citing papers in hand, and 2 from her cousin Lyle, who had never met a spotlight he didn't want to step into. Lyle posted a video from his kitchen about supporting family through tough seasons, a monologue full of strategically placed sighs and the kind of empathy that comes with affiliate links. Jeremy called while I stood at the window sipping coffee and watching rain streak across the glass. "You holding up?" he asked. "Better than she is?" I said. "Yeah," he said, voice tight. "Look, prepare for public framing. She'll try to repaint this as sudden and unfair, maybe hint at your supposed issues. If you want, I can refer you to a PR person to keep things quiet." "I want silence," I said, "on my side at least." "That's a plan," he said. "Also, be ready for her friend group to reach out. Ex-friends, brand contacts, people pick sides, then switch them midstream." As if on cue, an email landed from a name I didn't recognize at first. Carla Jenkins, PR manager. I opened it and found a carefully balanced message about narrative opportunity, miscommunications, and pathways to amicable outcomes. Carla had CC'd Olivia's public-facing address, a subtle nudge that said, "See, we're all being adults here." I replied with a single line, "Please direct all communication to my attorney." Jeremy's inbox was going to be a party, and I was glad not to attend. Around noon, I left for a haircut. I hadn't planned to. I just needed someone to touch my head with sharp objects in a way that suggested normal life goes on. My barber, Tony, asked how the wedding trip had been. I told him the weather was perfect. He nodded sagely and snipped in a way that said he had learned when not to invite more. Great skill, that. Back outside, the city felt like it had turned down the volume while I was in the chair. I walked past a billboard with a model's smile staged for maximum serenity and thought, Olivia could have done that better. The thought didn't hurt. It just existed, the way facts do. By late afternoon, Olivia's profile had begun hemorrhaging followers. The comments were a mix: fans who begged for context, strangers who wrote long think pieces about the parasocial economy, and merciless jokesters who could turn a teaspoon of someone's pain into a lake of entertainment. She posted a photo of a sunrise with a caption about healing and grace that read like a script she'd saved for a rainy day. A brand responded with a heart emoji, then deleted it within an hour. I made pasta and ate on the couch like a widower in a commercial, except my grief had no black suit and no church organ. It had spreadsheets and clean plates stacked by the sink. I turned on a basketball game and watched men in bright uniforms try to make geometry look beautiful. Somewhere in the third quarter, my phone buzzed with a new number. I almost ignored it, then answered with a flat, "Hello?" "Lucas," a male voice said. "We need to talk." "Always a promising opener," I said. "Who is this?" "Ethan," he said. Ethan Miles. Olivia had mentioned him once as a brand consultant who had a talent for packaging people. I pictured a man made of business cards and sales smiles. "Nice to meet you," I said, carefully neutral. "You blindsided her," he said, "and you're damaging her career." "Her career is an engine that runs on applause," I said. "I just stepped off the stage." "She's fragile right now," he said, layering concern like frosting. "If this escalates—" "I'm not escalating anything," I said. "I'm choosing no contact." He paused, then stopped the leaks. "I haven't leaked anything." "Someone has," he said, voice going tight. "Personal documents, financial moves, stuff fans shouldn't see." "I agree," I said. "Tell your PR person to stop trying to spin it. The harder she pushes, the more things fall out of her pockets." Ethan made a noise that wanted to be a laugh, but couldn't afford the optimism. "You think you're clever." "No," I said. "I think I'm finished." He hung up. I stared at the phone for a second and felt a small, rational click somewhere behind my eyes. If Ethan was calling me, they were scrambling. Scrambling people make mistakes, and scrambled people often leave fingerprints on the panic button. I didn't plan anything dramatic that night. I organized files. I labeled a folder, annulment, and another accounts, and a third, misc. I put the ring in a velvet box and locked it in the safe because I didn't trust my past self not to throw it into a river in a cinematic gesture I'd regret when the paperwork asked for evaluation. Practicality is revenge's quiet twin. Before bed, I scrolled through my camera roll. Between photos of spreadsheets and awkward selfies, I found one image from early dating days. Olivia sitting on the hood of my car outside a bakery, laughing at something I'd said. No makeup, no angle, just a person radiant in a way that required no audience. I stared at it until the present returned, and then I archived it like you file a receipt. Proof of purchase for a story that no longer runs. The following day, the blowback matured. A long-form blog broke the story with a headline so poised you could balance a teacup on it. Influencers fast-track wedding stalls. What went wrong? The article quoted an anonymous source describing communication gaps and misaligned values. The source sounded suspiciously like Carla with a voice filter and a wig. Then, buried halfway down, came a line about a brand consultant close to the couple. I didn't need a map to find Ethan inside that phrasing, polishing his image in the reflection of someone else's disaster. I forwarded the link to Jeremy. He called 2 minutes later. "Do you want to respond?" "Not to the article," I said, "but I do want to draw a boundary." "How?" "By doing nothing publicly and everything privately." "Lucas," he said, choosing his words, "you do realize that silence can be misread." "I'm counting on it," I said. That afternoon, I returned to the cafe, with a notebook this time. I made a list under the title, Control. I wrote down everything still within my reach. Finances, privacy, legal process, personal schedule, keys, devices. Beside each item I listed what I'd done and what remained. It looked small on paper, which is exactly the point. Huge drama is built from tiny levers. When I looked up, a man near the door was staring at me. Tall, linen jacket, the kind of tan Chicago grants to people who spend more time in other cities. He raised a hand, coolly casual, and walked over. Ethan. In person, he had the shine of someone who knows where the cameras usually are. "Lucas," he said, like we were old friends meeting for a routine lunch. I didn't stand. "You must really love coffee." "I love resolution," he said, taking the chair across from me without asking. "And I love efficiency. That makes two of us." He placed his phone on the table face down, a small trick to signal that he would give me his full attention. People who are always selling themselves use that gesture like it's currency. "She's hurting," he said. "A lot. You could end this with a single post." "A post," I repeated. the modern version of a notarized letter. Say you both need privacy, he said. Ask people to stop speculating. The brands will calm down. We can manage the rest. We can, I said. Is doing heavy lifting there. His smile thinned. Look, I get that you're upset. I'm not upset, I said. I'm precise. Great line, he said, eyes hardening. Feels rehearsed. That's your area, I said. For a moment, we just breathed the same air, each of us measuring the other like two accountants reconciling books that refused to match. Then he leaned forward. You walk away now, or this becomes something that hurts you too? How? I asked, genuinely curious. Stories, he said. Everyone has them. True, I said. The difference is that mine are boring. He sat back, calculating. You think you're holding the high ground because you haven't posted, but silence can be framed. If you won't help her, you're the villain. I'm okay with that, I said. Villain is just a title they give the person who stopped clapping. He stared at me, then stood. You'll regret this. Probably, I said. I'm keeping a list. He left. I watched his reflection in the window as he crossed the street to a sleek car that looked leased by a person who loved the idea of himself behind tinted glass. He drove off with a low hum and a confidence that didn't reach the corners of his eyes. I stayed at the table and wrote one more line in the notebook under Control. Ethan Miles. Pressure point. I didn't know exactly how yet. I just knew that men like Ethan believe attention is a shield. It isn't. It's a lantern that makes mistakes visible from blocks away. Walking home, I replayed the conversation and felt a small, bright thread of anticipation. Not rage, strategy. The kind you feel before a chess move that looks simple and turns out to be fatal to a plan without ever harming the opponent's body. I'm not a fighter. I am good at numbers and patterns and seeing where someone substituted a fantasy for a fact. At home, the apartment held itself still. I took another loop through every room, unplugged the smart speakers, changed the Wi-Fi password, and collected the spare key from the ceramic bowl shaped like a leaf that Olivia bought, because it photographed well. Then I opened the smart garage app and checked the visitor log. A notification caught my eye. Ethan had used the building's guest parking 3 times in the last month. Once the day before the wedding. Once while I was at a bachelor dinner with 2 college friends I hadn't seen in years. Once the week we moved in. Realism is not suspicion. Realism is adding a column and seeing what the sum tells you. The numbers told me that while I was planning to spend the next 40 years learning how to be a good partner, someone else was practicing being useful to her in 2-hour increments. I shut the app, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at the floor where her suitcase usually waited for trips. An hour later, after no new calls and 2 emails from vendors demanding her return of gifted items, I put on a jacket and went downstairs. The garage smelled like rubber and cold stone. My car sat in its spot like a loyal dog that expects nothing and receives regular oil changes as a reward. Ethan's preferred spot, visitor space 3, was empty. I stood there longer than necessary, thinking about cause and effect and how small nudges reshape stories. I wasn't going to cross any bright lines. I wasn't going to be reckless. But I could be theatrical in a way that never touched a person, only their symbols. If Ethan's image mattered, then denting that image without raising a hand would be the loudest whisper possible. I took out my phone and began a search, not for tutorials or chaos, for public records. License plate filings tied to his name from a business directory, model and color of his car listed in a proud photo from a promotional post he'd done with a boutique auto detailer 3 months ago. Street park habits gleaned from his own geotagging because people rarely think about metadata when they're busy selling you their afternoon. Patterns lay themselves out like a map if you let them. By the time I went back upstairs, I had a plan. Simple, harmless to humans, unpleasant to ego. It would say, someone is thinking about you in ways you don't control. The next move would be his. The next mistake, too. I powered down my phone and lay on my back, staring at the ceiling until the plaster lines blurred. Somewhere across town, Olivia was probably drafting a statement. Somewhere a brand manager was trying to sound empathetic while aligning with their own interests. Somewhere Ethan was telling himself that intimidation counts as leadership. Me? I was counting. Not followers, not likes. Steps, minutes, the time between a decision and its echo. It's amazing how quiet a war can be when it's conducted with calendars, passwords, and an eye for patterns. And as I closed my eyes, I pictured a gleaming car under a streetlight, the glass pristine, the paint flawless, the pride unmistakable. I saw the look on a man's face when he finds a message that doesn't use words at all. I smiled, not because I felt joy, but because logic had finally found a shape that fit. Tomorrow, I thought, we set the tone. I didn't expect silence to have a shape, but it did. It filled the apartment like fog, soft but complete, clinging to every corner that used to echo with her voice. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the faint blinking light from the security camera I'd installed months earlier. Olivia always thought it was for package theft. Technically, it was, just not the kind she imagined. She was still in Greece when the courier dropped off the papers. Her flight wouldn't land until evening Chicago time. That gave me a full day to watch the last dominoes fall. I made a sandwich, the kind she used to call bachelor tragic, and ate it over the sink because dishes felt too ceremonial for the occasion. Every once in a while, my phone buzzed with a notification. Articles, gossip threads, fan accounts debating whether the story was true. Someone had posted a grainy screenshot of our marriage certificate next to a photo of her crying in an airport lounge. Caption: From Sam couple goals to Tam solo healing. I leaned against the counter, chewing slowly, and muttered, "Fastest rebrand in the Midwest." The camera app pinged, motion detected. I tapped to open the feed. The door opened, light poured in, and there she was, same white jacket from our travel day, though now it hung off her shoulders like a misplaced memory. She looked around, waiting for something familiar to greet her. Nothing did. The room had gone minimalist by necessity. She stepped forward, rolling her suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, thumb moving fast. Her voice came through the feed faintly. "Lucas, are you here?" Her tone carried that strange blend of confidence and panic, half performance, half real. She dropped her bag, turned toward the kitchen, and froze when she saw the envelope. She tore it open and read. Then she sank onto the bar stool, hands gripping the paper. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The camera picked up her pacing, then the clatter of her phone hitting the counter as she started dialing. My phone vibrated across the room, an odd duet between screens. I let it ring. She called again. The third time, I picked up just to listen, not speak. "Lucas, please, what is this?" Her voice cracked in that way that used to make strangers rush to help her. I stayed quiet. "This isn't real, right? You can't just vanish." The sound of her moving around filled the line, drawers opening, footsteps crossing hardwood. "You took everything. She stopped mid-sentence, probably realizing what everything meant. The joint cards, the shared account, her access to the apartment system. I imagined her checking her wallet, then her reflection, wondering which part of her could convince me to forgive her fastest. "Please," she said finally, softer now. "Can we talk?" Click. I ended the call. I wasn't trying to be cruel. Cruelty implies emotion. What I felt was control, cold and mathematical. I watched her slump to the floor, phone pressed to her chest, tears smudging the edges of her mascara. For a moment, I wondered if she'd planned a live-stream apology yet. I could almost hear the draft in her head. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. We grow. We learn. Instead, she called Ethan. I couldn't hear his end of the call, but I didn't need to. Her words told the story. "He's gone." "No, he took the money, the cards, everything. I can't even get into the travel app. A pause. Then her face tightened. Don't say calm down. You don't get to say that right now. So the partnership wasn't all charm and coffee dates. Interesting. After a few minutes, she stood, wiped her face, and stormed into the bedroom. The camera lost sight of her, but I knew what came next. Checking drawers, searching for my clothes, finding only hers. She'd never realized how little I'd brought into her world, how temporary my presence had been, even when she called it forever. When she reappeared, she was holding the framed photo from our wedding reception. I'd left it on purpose, not as a reminder, but as bait. She stared at it for a long while, then set it face down on the table. The feed flickered as she walked out of frame. A door slammed. Silence. I closed the app and leaned back, watching the reflection of my own smirk on the laptop screen. For someone who curated her life around perception, being unseen might be the worst punishment. Later that evening, I took a walk. Chicago's air was thick with rain that couldn't commit. Every block felt like a movie set after wrap, empty, the lights still on, waiting for a director who'd gone home. I stopped by a convenience store and bought gum. The cashier nodded politely. Normal life continued, gloriously uninterested in influencer scandals. When I returned home, my phone was littered with new notifications. Ethan had posted a statement. Sometimes privacy is the most powerful response. His tone screamed corporate damage control. Beneath the post, a few of Olivia's fans defended her, most didn't. The internet has a short attention span, but a long memory for hypocrisy. Then came the texts. Olivia, you've humiliated me. Olivia, everyone knows, you leaked it, didn't you? Olivia, you wanted to ruin me. Olivia, congratulations, you did. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Proofs. Inside were screenshots, receipts, and one particularly interesting email chain between Olivia and Ethan discussing brand positioning during engagement season. The timestamps lined up perfectly with the weeks she'd been too busy to meet my parents. I wasn't going to use them yet. Just having them felt like leverage, like standing in a thunderstorm with a grounded umbrella while everyone else waved lightning rods. By midnight, the story had spread further. One gossip page framed it as quiet sabotage. Another speculated about emotional manipulation. Words stacked like dominoes, each one falling neatly toward her. I poured myself a drink, not celebration, just punctuation, and sat by the window watching headlights smear across wet asphalt. Across town, Olivia was likely pacing a hotel lobby, rehearsing explanations for people who didn't want them. The phone buzzed again. A new message from a blocked number. Unknown. You're playing a dangerous game. Ethan, most likely. Subtle as a billboard. I typed, then deleted my first response. So was she. Instead, I locked the screen and finished my drink. At 3 a.m., another ping from the camera app. She was back. Same jacket, same storm in her eyes. She walked to the counter, picked up the framed photo again, and smashed it against the edge. Glass scattered. Then she sat down amid the pieces, head in her hands. I closed the app. There's only so much satisfaction a man can take from watching someone realize the cost of performance. The next morning, I went back to the office, and for the first time in months, my inbox was just numbers again. Clean. Predictable. I liked it that way. At lunch, Jeremy called. The story's everywhere. You sure you're okay with this level of exposure? It's her world, I said. I just turned on the lights. He sighed. You know this isn't over, right? I'm counting on it, I said. That night, as the city buzzed beneath my window, I scrolled through her latest post. A long caption about growth, framed with a photo of her holding a coffee cup and staring into the distance like an unpaid philosopher. The comments were brutal. One read, "Growth looks a lot like consequences." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered her voice on that balcony, sweet and careless, saying, "My ex would have booked the suite." I smiled. "Enjoy the suite, Olivia," I whispered. "This one's all yours." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Inside, I felt the stillness of a man who finally understood the value of silence. Morning came with the kind of gray that makes every building look like a backdrop. Chicago had decided on drizzle instead of rain, which felt appropriate, the kind of weather that doesn't commit but still ruins your shoes. I walked to the office under an umbrella that kept flipping inside out every few steps, like the universe was laughing quietly. By now, Olivia's scandal had fully fermented. It was everywhere: podcasts, gossip accounts, even a segment on a local morning show called Digital Hearts. The host introduced the story with the same tone used for weather updates. Influencer Olivia Carter's fairy tale marriage seems to have taken an unexpected turn. Unexpected. Sure. At work, people avoided the topic with the politeness of coworkers who definitely knew. My boss, Daniel, stopped by my desk, hands shoved into his suit pockets. "Rough week?" "Just practicing minimalism," I said. He smiled like he didn't get it but wanted to appear supportive. "Good attitude. We've all had our rough ones." Then he left, leaving behind the faint smell of expensive cologne and middle management. I buried myself in reports. Numbers don't gossip. They don't ask for explanations. They obey. And for a few hours I could almost believe my life had reverted to its previous balance, predictable, contained, colorless. That illusion broke around lunch. My phone buzzed with a notification. Ethan Miles mentioned in industry leak. I clicked. Apparently one of Ethan's clients had accused him of improper representation. Nothing illegal, but bad enough for PR, promising visibility he couldn't deliver, taking a generous fee and disappearing. The article referenced unnamed sources. That source was me. 2 days ago, I'd sent an anonymous tip and forwarded the public proof. Unpaid invoices, a series of auto-replies from Ethan's agency that all shared the same grammatical error. It wasn't a crime, it was incompetence. But incompetence in his business is worse than crime. By the afternoon, his name was trending for all the wrong reasons. I watched from my cubicle, pretending to scroll through financial data. A coworker leaned over. "Hey, isn't that the guy?" "Yeah," I said, not looking up. "That's him." "Wow," she said. "Rough week for everyone, huh?" "You could say that." I went home early, citing a headache. The moment I walked into my apartment, the quiet greeted me like an old ally. I opened my laptop and checked the live updates. Ethan's firm had issued a statement denying all claims. The client had already posted screenshots of their emails. Internet. 1. Ethan. 0. A new message appeared in my inbox. Private address. No subject line. From Ethan Miles. Message. "You think this is funny? You have no idea who you're messing with." I typed back. "Sure I do. You're the guy who can't proofread regards." Then I hit send. Petty? Maybe. But precision is satisfying. I poured myself coffee, sat by the window, and waited for the next domino. It came fast. Olivia posted a vague statement on her story. White background, black font, the influencer's flag of surrender. Sometimes people show their true colors when you're at your lowest. I see it now. Her followers assumed she was talking about Ethan. Ethan assumed she was talking about me. The beauty of ambiguity. Everyone takes it personally. That evening, I decided to make the rivalry less digital, not violent, just visible. Ethan's agency had an office downtown, glass front, modern, designed to look important. I walked past it after work, umbrella tucked under my arm. Inside, I saw him through the window, pacing, gesturing with his phone. I couldn't hear him, but I could guess the script. "We'll handle this. Stay calm. Don't post anything emotional." Outside, his sleek silver car sat in the lot. the same one he'd bragged about on social media last month. I knelt, pretending to tie my shoe, and slipped a folded note under his windshield wiper. It read, "Nice car. Hope it runs as smooth as your lies." No signature. I wasn't trying to scare him, just remind him he wasn't invisible. The next morning, Olivia called me again. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Lucas," she said, voice trembling, "Ethan's saying you're behind the leaks." "Interesting theory," I said. "Did you?" "I'm just a man at his desk, Olivia." Her breath caught. "You're enjoying this." "I'm surviving it," I said. "Big difference." She hesitated. "You made your point. Can we please just end this quietly? You don't have to ruin everything." I almost laughed. "Olivia, everything was already ruined. I just stopped pretending it wasn't." She exhaled sharply and hung up. For the first time, I felt it. Not relief exactly, but movement. The story had shifted. They were reacting, and I was setting tempo. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at my building. I spotted him on the camera feed before he rang. Perfect suit, dark circles under his eyes. I watched him jab the buzzer like a man trying to press control back into existence. I answered through the intercom. "You lost, or just nostalgic?" "Open the door," he said. "We need to talk." "Pretty sure that's what phones are for." "Fine," he said, his tone breaking a little. "You win, okay? Just stop." I didn't respond. I let him talk into the static for a full 10 seconds before saying, "You might want to check your car before you drive home." A pause. Then the sound of footsteps retreating fast. I smiled. Not because I'd done anything to the car, I hadn't. But the idea that I might have was enough to shake him. That night, I went for a run along the lakefront. The air was sharp, the city humming quietly behind me. Every step felt lighter, cleaner. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires energy. This was efficiency. When I got home, there was one new email waiting in my inbox from Carla Jenkins, Olivia's PR friend. Subject: "Please call me. This is spiraling." I didn't. Instead, I opened a fresh document and began typing out my next list. Revenge wasn't a sprint. It was a carefully managed portfolio. Ethan had just been the first adjustment. There were still a few assets left to rebalance. For now, though, I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and said out loud, to no one in particular, "Consulting fees, paid in full." Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline like applause that didn't need an audience. By the time March settled over Chicago, the scandal had a pulse of its own. You could almost feel it thrumming beneath the city noise, inside coffee shops, across comment sections, on subway screens, flashing clickbait headlines. Olivia's name had become shorthand for a lesson. Be careful what you curate. At the office, I'd become the quiet celebrity no one wanted to mention. People whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. A few co-workers acted overly nice, as though politeness might protect them from becoming the next meme. I didn't care. I had spreadsheets, markets, projections, things that existed in the realm of logic, not public opinion. Numbers didn't ask for apologies. But the irony of her downfall wasn't lost on me. She'd built her entire career on the illusion of control. Now, she was the story everyone else controlled. On a rainy Tuesday morning, my co-worker Grace leaned over our cubicle wall, holding her phone like it was contraband. "Lucas, did you see this?" I didn't look up from my screen. If it starts with the word exclusive, the answer's no. She grinned awkwardly. "It's just your ex. She's on a podcast talking about finding inner peace." I laughed quietly. "Let me guess. Sponsored by a candle company?" Grace hesitated. "You're not mad?" "Grace," I said, still typing. "Getting mad would imply I didn't see it coming." She nodded, pretending to understand, then retreated to her desk. That was the thing about offices. Everyone thinks they're starring in a documentary, when really it's just background noise for someone else's drama. By lunch, Olivia's healing segment had hit 500,000 views. The comments split neatly into two camps: sympathy and suspicion. The internet always needs villains. When they get bored of one, they start rebuilding another. That evening, I opened her video out of sheer curiosity. There she was, sitting cross-legged on a cream sofa, the skyline blurred behind her. "Sometimes," she said softly, "you have to lose everything to remember who you are." I muttered, "You might try losing Wi-Fi next." Her eyes glistened on screen. "People think they know my story, but they don't. What happened to me could happen to anyone who trusts too easily." She paused just long enough to let the line sink in. The manipulation was flawless. Subtle guilt wrapped in vulnerability. She didn't need to name me. Everyone already knew the script. I closed the video halfway through. Watching her twist truth into something marketable was like watching someone paint over a crack in the wall and call it renovation. But even walls eventually crumble. The next morning, Ethan's name popped up again. This time not beside hers. Someone had leaked internal emails from his agency showing performance misreporting. Translation: he exaggerated client engagement numbers to secure deals. Not illegal. Just dishonest enough to poison a career. I sipped my coffee and smiled. The universe had finally decided to handle customer service without my input. Still, I couldn't resist adding a nudge. I sent an anonymous message to a journalist at a marketing trade blog. Tip: check Ethan Miles's client contracts versus actual deliverables. Start with the skincare campaign from last summer. Happy hunting. By noon, the story was online. Agency under review for inflated metrics. Ethan's face wasn't pictured, but his initials were enough. At 3 o'clock, Jeremy called. "You feeding reporters again?" "Just helping accuracy find its way home," I said. He groaned. "You're playing chess with people who think they're in a soap opera." "That's what makes it entertaining," I said. "But entertainment has consequences." The following day, Ethan posted a carefully worded denial. "We're cooperating with clients to clarify misunderstandings." It was PR language at its finest. Vague, defensive, already defeated. I watched his reputation crack like a porcelain mask. One post later, Olivia unfollowed him. Then refollowed. Then unfollowed again. It was almost art, the digital version of slamming a door and peeking through the peephole. 3 nights later, I decided to take a walk near his office. Partly curiosity, partly boredom, partly strategy. The streets downtown shimmered from an evening drizzle, every reflection bending the light just enough to make the city feel foreign. His agency's front window glowed like a fish tank, glass, steel, and stress. Inside, I saw him pacing behind a desk, phone pressed to his ear. Even from across the street, his gestures looked desperate. Out front sat his precious car, silver, polished to mirror perfection, gleaming under the streetlight like a trophy. I crossed the street, bent slightly under the pretense of adjusting my shoelace, and slipped a folded note beneath the windshield wiper. "Nice car. Hope it handles guilt as smoothly as asphalt." I didn't wait to see him find it. Some things are better left to imagination. The next day, Olivia uploaded a video titled, "Letting Go of Negativity." The thumbnail showed her holding a mug that said, "Peace, please." The irony was espresso strong. She began with a deep sigh. "This week has been hard. People keep spreading lies about me and someone I cared about, but I believe truth always wins." I couldn't help muttering, "You'd have to let it cross the finish line first." Still, I watched the whole thing. She wasn't just performing anymore. She was convincing herself. Her tone trembled in places where confidence used to live. The perfect lighting couldn't hide the exhaustion behind her eyes. She ended with a line that made me pause. "Sometimes the person you think ruined you was just holding up a mirror." For a moment, I felt something almost like pity. Then I remembered she'd said the same line to me once, months before the wedding, when she'd joked about my job being too safe for someone with ambition. History loves repetition. It's people who pretend not to notice. The next morning, I woke to a new message from an unknown number. Unknown, you're playing with fire. I typed back, fire doesn't scare me. It burns fake things first. No reply. By Friday, her cousin Lyle had inserted himself into the spectacle. He'd gone live on his own channel to set the record straight. Olivia's been through so much, he said, shaking his head solemnly. People forget she's human. She made mistakes, sure, but who hasn't? Every few sentences, he adjusted the camera angle to show his designer hoodie and conveniently placed energy drink. 3 sponsorship tags sat in the caption. Sympathy monetized in real time. I turned off the stream after 5 minutes. Watching opportunists feed on each other was satisfying, but also nauseating. Like junk food, crunchy, cheap, forgettable. Still, I wasn't done. Not yet. I spent Saturday morning gathering the last puzzle pieces. Screenshots of her collaborations, contracts that blurred ethical lines, half-truths tucked in public archives. Nothing illegal, but enough to remind her that transparency works both ways. That night, I sent a final anonymous package to 3 journalists and 1 gossip account that specialized in industry accountability. Inside were public records and a short message. If you want the full picture, start with the Oralite contract. There's more to authenticity than skincare. By Monday morning, the story broke. Influencer dropped by major brand amid credibility concerns. The details were factual, the tone was surgical, and the fallout was immediate. Olivia posted a blank white image on her feed with a single caption, "Taking time offline." Translation: retreat before collapse. Comments flooded in anyway. We support you. Stay strong. Accountability matters. The digital chorus of contradiction. Ethan, meanwhile, tried to rebrand himself as a consultant for crisis management. The irony made my coffee taste better, but people like him don't vanish quietly. That Thursday evening, as I locked up my office, I saw a figure standing by the exit. Sharp suit, slick hair, the faint smell of expensive desperation. "Ethan," I said, "you look like you lost your LinkedIn password." He smiled without humor. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "I'm enjoying my commute," I said. This conversation wasn't on the schedule. He stepped closer. "You think this makes you a hero? You're just another parasite feeding on chaos?" "Then I guess we're finally equals," I said. His jaw tightened. "You'll regret crossing me." "I already crossed you," I said, and all I found on the other side was empty branding. He glared, exhaled sharply, and walked away. The click of his shoes echoed down the hallway, sharp, deliberate, hollow. As soon as the door closed, I leaned against the wall and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Not fear, just release. The next morning, another small headline. Agency miles ahead shuts down operations pending investigation. A comment beneath the article read, "Guess it wasn't miles ahead after all." I laughed so hard my coffee nearly spilled. That weekend, the city thawed from winter's grip. The lake was still half frozen, but joggers were out, dogs barked, and the air smelled like something beginning again. I ran for the first time in months, my playlist pounding rhythm into the pavement. Somewhere between mile 2 and 3, I realized I hadn't thought about Olivia for almost an hour. It felt strange, like missing a sound you'd learned to live without. When I got home, I found a letter slipped under my door. No envelope, just folded paper. You've made your point. You've taken everything. Now leave me with what's left. No signature, no punctuation. Just desperation written in neat lines. I didn't respond. Words would have ruined the silence I'd earned. Instead, I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the city blink below me. For the first time, I noticed how quiet mornings could be without the noise of notification alerts. No curated quotes, No messages from strangers dissecting my life. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint murmur of traffic. It wasn't victory. It was balance. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't finished. Not because I wanted more, but because people like Olivia don't fade, they regroup. Attention was oxygen for her, and I'd merely closed one window. She'd find another. That night, a message appeared from a private account. Unknown. You think the internet will remember your version forever? Wait until mine drops. I typed a single reply. Do your worst. I already lived through it once. No answer. 2 days later, she reappeared online. New username, new tone, new mantra. The same followers pretending they'd rediscovered her. The caption read, "The truth always finds the light." Of course it does. I just wondered whose light she'd borrow this time. I smiled, closed the app, and whispered, "Good luck, Olivia. You'll need it." Then I turned off my phone. The hum of the city outside the window sounded steady, patient, almost approving. I leaned back, let the quiet fill the room, and realized something important. Revenge doesn't end when your opponent breaks. It ends when you stop needing to watch, and I was finally done watching. The storm didn't start with thunder. It started with whispers. By the first week of April, the city felt charged, like something was waiting to happen but hadn't decided when. The streets seemed to hum under the weight of headlines. Olivia's silence had been long enough to make people impatient, and the internet has the attention span of a child in a candy store. They wanted fresh outrage. When they couldn't find any, they went back to her. She fed them exactly what they wanted. A podcast clip surfaced late Monday night, Olivia's voice, honeyed and shaky, talking about surviving betrayal. The host, a sympathetic type with a voice like chamomile tea, asked careful questions designed to sound deep. Olivia didn't name names, but she didn't have to. The pauses between her words did the work. Sometimes, she said softly, revenge looks like peace. But peace is just a quieter form of control. I listened to that line twice. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning wrapped in poetry. By Tuesday morning, every gossip page had resurrected her story. The photos came back, the hashtags returned. Even the local morning news ran a segment titled "Influencer Reclaims Her Narrative." Reclaims. That word stuck like grit between my teeth. At the office, Grace handed me my coffee with a careful look. "You've seen the clip, right?" "Hard to avoid," I said. "She sounds different." "She sounds rehearsed," I said. "She always did." Grace hesitated. "You don't think she'll try something?" I finished for her. "Grace, she lives for the performance. The only question is when the curtain rises again." And rise it did. Wednesday morning, I woke to 37 notifications. Ethan Miles was trending again, only this time not because of marketing fraud. Someone had leaked private messages between him and Olivia. Not explicit, but close enough to humiliation. Each message was time-stamped, showing their ongoing partnership long after the breakup. The implication was clear. While she was preaching healing, she'd still been plotting deals with him behind the scenes. The public turned on her in real time. Comments flooded her accounts, half pity, half disgust. Ethan denied everything, of course, posting a statement about edited screenshots and false framing. I hadn't touched this one. It wasn't me. That fact should have brought relief. Instead, it made me uneasy. Because someone else was now playing the game, and they weren't nearly as careful. By late afternoon, a small influencer gossip page claimed to have inside info from an anonymous source close to the couple. The post ended with a line that made me freeze. She wasn't the only one being watched. The phrasing was too pointed, too knowing. At 6:48 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from a blocked number. Unknown. You think you're untouchable. I stared at the screen for a long time before setting it face down on the table. Somewhere, Ethan was unraveling. And in his panic, he'd probably decided I was responsible for everything wrong with his life. Which, to be fair, wasn't entirely untrue. That night, I ran along the lake to clear my head. The wind carried the cold scent of spring water, sharp and restless. I was half a mile from home when a car's headlights flared behind me. Too slow to be random traffic, too close to be coincidence. I turned my head slightly. A dark sedan crept along the curb, pacing me. The windows tinted, engine humming low. Then a voice, Ethan's, called out, muffled by glass. "We need to talk." I slowed but didn't stop. "Find a therapist," I said over my shoulder. "Lucas, I'm serious." "So am I." The car rolled forward, then braked sharply as I cut across the street. He got out, slammed the door, and jogged toward me, shoes splashing through puddles. "Stop walking," he barked. I did, mostly because I didn't feel like being followed into the dark. He stopped a few feet away, chest heaving, rain soaking into his jacket. Up close, he looked rough. Creased suit, tired eyes, an edge of panic that didn't suit him. "You think this is all some kind of game?" he said. "Pretty sure that's your department," I said. He glared. "You leaked those messages." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't. But I like that you assumed I did. You ruined me." "Not true," I said. "You were halfway to ruin before I showed up. I just provided the lighting." He stepped closer, face twitching with frustration. "You have no idea what she's capable of." "Actually," I said, "I do. That's why I left." He laughed bitterly. "You think you won? You're part of the show, man. She's dragging you down with her." "Then she'll have to do it quietly," I said, turning away. The audience stopped clapping. I walked off, leaving him standing there under the streetlight, shouting something I couldn't hear over the wind. The next morning, his agency's website went dark. By noon, Olivia had deleted her newest post. The silence was sudden, eerie. Like two performers realizing the stage had finally emptied. But the reprieve didn't last. Friday night, while I was eating takeout and half watching a basketball game, my building's security app pinged, motion detected in the garage. I tapped the alert and froze. The feed showed Ethan's car, same sedan, parked beside mine. The timestamp read 7:12 p.m. I waited, watching the screen. A few minutes later, a figure moved through the frame. Tall, hooded, pacing near my car, glancing up toward the camera, then gone. I didn't call anyone. I just went downstairs. The garage was dim, echoing with the hum of fluorescent lights. My footsteps sounded too loud. When I reached my parking spot, the car was still there. But Ethan wasn't. The engine was running, door half open, interior lights glowing faintly. I stepped closer. On the driver's seat sat an envelope. Inside, a single note. "You started this. Let's see how well you finish it." No signature. I looked around, but the garage was empty. I could hear my own breathing. The air felt thick, heavy with unsaid things. Back upstairs, I poured a drink and reread the note. Twice. It didn't scare me. It irritated me. Ethan was unraveling, and unraveling men make sloppy threats. But still, I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted. The power dynamic had blurred. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was reckless. Saturday morning, I got an alert from an old friend who still worked in PR. "Heads up," she texted. "Someone's pitching a story about you to 3 tabloids. They're calling it The Analyst Behind the Annulment." I stared at her message, then typed back, "Source?" "Anonymous," she replied. "But if I had to guess, your ex or her former manager." It was almost funny. They were both sinking, and instead of saving themselves, they were throwing anchors. I spent the next few hours cleaning the apartment, a task I usually reserved for clearing my head. Every surface I wiped, every drawer I straightened, felt like reclaiming territory. When I finished, I poured another coffee and sat by the window. From 10 stories up, the city looked harmless. People walking dogs, taxis gliding through puddles. Nobody knew about the war being waged in emails and comments and whispers. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Unknown. You can't hide forever. I typed back, I'm not hiding. I'm home. That evening, the confrontation came. I was driving back from a late grocery run, the streets nearly empty. As I turned into the gas station near the river, I noticed a familiar figure by the pumps, Olivia. She stood beside her car, hood up, arms folded. Her headlights cast long, pale lines across the wet pavement. When she saw me, her posture shifted. She stepped forward, blocking my path. "Lucas," she said. I stopped the car and rolled down the window. "What are the odds?" "Don't start," she said. "I know you think this is poetic justice or whatever, but you've gone too far." "I haven't done anything lately," I said. "That's the problem. You all keep doing it to yourselves." Her voice cracked slightly. "You made everyone hate me." "I didn't make them anything," I said. "I just stopped protecting the lie." "You think you're the good guy?" she said. "You think sitting behind your screens and pulling strings makes you noble?" "I never said I was noble," I said. "Just effective." She stepped closer to the car, rain catching in her hair. "You can't fix what we were by destroying what I am." "What you are," I said quietly, "was never real." That one landed. Her eyes flickered with something between pain and rage. She leaned down, voice low. "You'll regret this. You'll wake up one day and realize you built your life around hating me." I met her stare. "You give yourself too much credit." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain fell harder, drumming against the car roof like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. Then she stepped back. "We're done," she said. "Completely." "Finally," I said. I started the car and pulled away, leaving her in the rearview mirror. She stood there under the flickering gas station lights, her figure small, defiant, framed by the storm. When I got home, I expected relief. Instead, I felt empty. Revenge doesn't fill holes, it just stops them from echoing. I poured another drink, sat by the window, and let the city lights blur. Then my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown. She's gone too. No explanation, no context, just that. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Whoever sent it wanted a reaction. I'd run out of those. I set the phone down, leaned back, and listened to the sound of distant thunder rolling over the lake. The storm outside had passed, but the one between us, me, her, him, had just burned itself out. No winners, no applause, just silence. And for the first time since Santorini, I realized silence could be a kind of victory too. By the time April wore thin, the scandal had outgrown me. It had grown its own legs, 1,000 anonymous voices walking it across every feed, every podcast, every gossip panel pretending to be journalism. Olivia's silence had lasted long enough to make her interesting again. Silence always does that. It gives the illusion of depth, even when it's just emptiness in a prettier frame. I hadn't said a word publicly since Santorini. People mistook that for dignity, but the truth was simpler. I didn't need to speak. She and Ethan had done the talking for me, over and over, until their own words tangled into knots tight enough to strangle them. Still, curiosity's a stubborn thing. Even when you win, you want to peek at the scoreboard. So, on a Sunday afternoon that smelled like rain and burnt coffee, I found myself watching her comeback livestream. 42,000 people tuned in. Olivia sat in front of a beige wall, wearing a sweater that said, "Be kind, but strong," the kind of slogan that sells forgiveness like it's a scented candle. Her voice was soft, deliberate, each pause designed for empathy. "Hi, everyone," she began. "I know I've been quiet. I needed time to heal." The comments flooded instantly. "We missed you. Ignore the haters. Queen energy." She smiled at the camera. the same smile she'd practiced for years. When you lose everything, you find out who you really are. I found peace, I found truth, and I found out who was never on my side. There it was, the bait. A vague accusation served on a plate of self-pity. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The audience filled in the blanks. I almost closed the stream, but she said something that froze my hand. People can pretend to be good, she said, voice dropping, but some people build entire lives on manipulation, on control. And when you stop feeding their ego, they show their true face. I leaned back and smiled. "You're welcome," I muttered. 20 minutes later, she ended the broadcast with a shaky wave. "Thank you for listening. I'm stronger now." The comment counter ticked upward even after she signed off. Strength sells better than apology. Then the real storm hit. A journalist named Dana from Market Pulse Weekly, someone I vaguely remembered from college, sent me an email with the subject line, "Inquiry regarding Olivia Carter and brand accountability." Her message was polite, professional, curious in that journalist way that sounds harmless until it isn't. "Hi, Lucas. I'm working on a feature about influencer transparency and would love your perspective on public image versus authenticity. I understand you were formerly married to Olivia Carter. If you're open to it, I'd like to ask a few questions. Off the record if necessary." I stared at the email for a long minute. I hadn't planned to get involved again, but something about her phrasing, authenticity, itched under my skin. Authenticity had been Olivia's brand, her mantra, her weapon. She'd used it to justify every half-truth, every edited emotion, every candid post that took 15 tries. I replied 3 hours later. "Dana, I won't comment on personal matters, but if your story is about authenticity, I can share documentation that speaks louder than interviews." I attached a compressed folder named Transparency. Inside, contract excerpts, influencer brand correspondence, proof of purchased engagement data, timestamps of deleted sponsored posts. Nothing illegal, just honest math. Numbers never lie, people do. I hit send, closed my laptop, and went for a walk. The air felt lighter afterward, like I'd just mailed the last page of a confession I didn't owe. 3 days later, Dana's article dropped. The Cost of Image: How One Influencer Built and Lost Her Empire. Her writing was clean, surgical, almost gentle. She didn't insult Olivia. She simply peeled back the glossy layers until only structure remained. The story outlined everything: inflated engagement metrics, undisclosed partnerships, backroom negotiations with Ethan's agency. The piece wasn't vindictive. It was factual, calm, devastating. It ended with a single line about me. Lucas Carter declined to comment but confirmed that the annulment was finalized in March. His silence has remained consistent since the separation. Exactly as planned. Within hours, the internet imploded. Hashtags flipped from supportive to speculative. Brands issued statements about values alignment. Olivia's sponsors quietly archived her collaborations. Ethan's agency scrubbed their client list like a guilty conscience. By Monday, she'd deleted her Twitter account. Tuesday, her followers started demanding refunds for her empowerment webinar. Wednesday, Ethan's company issued a press release about strategic restructuring. By Thursday, Olivia's face had vanished from every brand campaign she'd once bragged about. For the first time since the honeymoon, I slept through the night. Friday morning, I opened my inbox to find a message with no subject line and an email address made of random numbers. "You think this is over? You think silence protects you?" No signature, but I recognized the rhythm of the threat. Ethan had always written like a man who thought punctuation was optional. I deleted it, finished my coffee, and went to work. At the office, Grace slid into the chair across from mine. "You're trending again," she whispered. "Can't imagine why." She showed me her phone. "Ex-husband of influencer breaks silence, sort of." "I didn't even speak," I said. "Exactly," she said. That's what makes it interesting. I sighed. The internet really is just a stage for people who can't afford therapy. That night, I came home to find a small brown parcel outside my apartment door. No return label, just my name written in block letters. I carried it inside, set it on the counter, and opened it carefully. Inside was a picture frame, the wedding photo. Santorini, blue sky, her in that white dress, me with a smile that hadn't yet learned what was coming. The glass was cracked diagonally across both our faces. No note, just a reminder that ghosts don't disappear. They mail themselves back to you. I set the photo face down on the counter and poured myself a drink. The next morning, my building's security app pinged at 3:14 a.m. Motion detected at door. The feed showed a hooded figure standing outside my apartment for less than 10 seconds. The person looked up at the camera, then walked away. I paused the video, zoomed in, and saw just enough to recognize the shape of her face. Olivia. She wasn't smiling this time. I didn't report it. I didn't call anyone. I just changed the locks and slept on the couch. When I woke up, sunlight filled the room and the world outside kept spinning. That's the thing about personal disasters. They don't stop traffic. By noon, another email arrived, this one from Dana. Lucas, the story's getting traction. Thank you again for your help. I wanted you to know that Olivia has posted a statement calling it a coordinated smear campaign. She claims to have proof of manipulation. If you'd like to respond, I can include an addendum. I replied instantly. No response needed. Truth doesn't need footnotes. That weekend, a podcast dissected the entire situation like it was a true crime case. Commentators debated motives, morals, accountability. They built theories around screenshots and captions as if truth could be solved like a puzzle. Meanwhile, I went grocery shopping and listened to a voicemail from Jeremy. "You sure you're okay?" he said. "You sound calm. That's either great or terrifying." "Terrifying for them," I murmured. He chuckled. "You planning to stop soon?" "I already have," I said. "The world's doing cleanup for me." Sunday evening, I was walking home from the gym when I noticed a black sedan idling near the corner of my street, the same make and color as Ethan's. My gut tightened. I slowed, pretending to check my phone. The car lingered for a few seconds, then rolled off into traffic. Paranoia? Maybe, but paranoia is just intuition with better marketing. When I got home, I opened my laptop and started typing. Notes, details, patterns. Not a confession, not a plan. Just a record. Phase 1, financial withdrawal. Phase 2, image erosion. Phase 3, exposure. Under outcome, I wrote a single word. Balance. Then I closed the document and stared out the window. The city glowed like circuitry, alive, humming, indifferent. A knock broke the quiet. Soft, measured. I froze. Another knock. I walked to the door, keeping my steps slow. Through the peephole, I saw nothing, just an empty hallway. Then, faintly, a voice. "You think it's over, don't you?" Her voice. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. I just waited. After a few seconds, footsteps retreated. Elevator doors slid shut somewhere down the hall. I waited another full minute before unlocking the deadbolt and looking out. The hallway was empty, but on the floor lay a small white envelope. Inside, a hotel room keycard and a note written in neat, deliberate script. "Meet me tomorrow. One conversation, no cameras, no tricks." I dropped the note in the trash. By morning, I'd forgotten about it, or convinced myself I had. But that night, lying awake, the thought itched at the edges of my mind. What could she possibly want now? Redemption, closure, round 2? It didn't matter. I wasn't going. The next day, Dana's article reached national circulation. The backlash became noise. The internet devoured her one last time before moving on to fresher chaos. By the end of the week, her accounts were gone, deleted. Her name faded from the sidebar, replaced by a celebrity divorce and a viral pet video. That's the thing about public attention. It dies quicker than guilt. I thought that was the end. Until I got one last message, handwritten, slipped under my door like before. You always wanted silence. Congratulations. This time, I didn't set it down. I burned it over the sink, watching the paper curl into gray flakes. When it was gone, the apartment smelled faintly of smoke and finality. I sat down, took a slow sip of coffee, and whispered to the quiet, "Finally." But even as I said it, I knew the story hadn't vanished. It never does. It just moves to another corner of someone else's feed, another whisper, another thread. Still, for me, the noise had stopped, and in its place, there was something better. Not peace, not closure, control. The days after her visit passed like static. Nothing happened, but everything hummed. Every small sound, mail slot clicking, elevator doors opening, had a new weight. I didn't feel afraid. I just felt aware, like the air itself was waiting for the next move. When people talk about closure, they imagine something neat, a ribbon around chaos. But closure is never clean. It's the echo after the door slams, the silence that follows noise. And Olivia had never been good with silence. I didn't call the police, or Jeremy, or anyone. There was no crime, just a gesture. Besides, I knew her language too well. The cracked photo wasn't a threat. It was a performance. Her way of saying, "I can still reach you." I let her message sit on the counter for 2 days before I turned the frame face up again. The crack across our smiles looked deliberate, a fault line between who we were and who we became. I almost admired the composition. On the third night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly open, not forced, just ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. The lights were off. Everything was quiet, too quiet, except for the faint smell of her perfume, familiar, expensive, haunting in the way nostalgia always is. Then I heard it. A soft sound from the living room. A click. "Lucas?" Her voice. I flicked the light switch. She was standing near the window, her reflection caught between the glass and the city lights. The cracked photo frame was in her hands. "Breaking and entering," I said, calm but sharp. "A new career path?" She turned. "You left the door unlocked." "Convenient," I said. "How long have you been rehearsing this scene?" "I'm not here to fight." Her voice trembled, but it wasn't weakness. It was exhaustion wrapped in pride. "I just want you to listen." "Go ahead," I said. "You always did love a monologue." She winced. "You think you've won, don't you?" "No," I said. "I just stopped playing." She set the frame down carefully on the coffee table. "You destroyed me. My career, my name, everything." I tilted my head. "No. I just showed people what was already there. You did the rest." "You don't understand," she said, stepping closer. "I did what I had to do. You were never enough. You were safe, predictable, and I thought that was what I wanted, until it wasn't." "Congratulations," I said. "Self-awareness, 3 years late." Her eyes glimmered, not from tears, but something colder. "Do you really think this makes you better? You're just like me, Lucas. You love control. You just hide it behind your spreadsheets and sarcasm." "Maybe," I said. "But at least my control doesn't require an audience." She laughed, a hollow sound that bounced off the walls. "You think you've moved on, but you haven't. You're still orbiting me." "Funny," I said, "because you're the one standing in my living room." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension was sharp, almost clean. The kind that doesn't explode, it just stretches until it snaps. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," I said. "That's the point." She stared at me for a long time, then her expression changed. Something softer, smaller. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" "No," I said quietly. And that's what terrifies you. She turned toward the door, pausing as she reached for the handle. You'll regret this, she said, voice low. I already did, I said. That's why we're here. She looked back one last time, her face caught in the glow of the hallway light. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time, I didn't chase the sound. I stood there for a while, staring at the cracked photo on the table. The crack split us perfectly, her on one side, me on the other, like the universe itself had drawn a line. I didn't move it. I wanted it to stay that way. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. Her car, parked outside the building, windshield shattered. Probably Ethan's revenge, or her own attempt to bait me into reacting. Either way, it wasn't my problem. I deleted it. By morning, the news had found her again. A video surfaced online. Olivia arguing with someone off camera in a parking lot, shouting about betrayal and lies. The internet did what it always did, took sides, picked apart every frame, decided who to hate this week. I closed my laptop and stared at the city outside. The skyline looked cleaner now, sharper, like someone had turned up the contrast on reality. That evening, Jeremy called. She's spiraling, he said. You seeing this? I saw, I said. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. She's not my story anymore. He paused. You sound different. I am, I said. I'm tired. That night I drove to the old apartment we'd once shared before we moved in together, the one we rented during our first year of dating. It was empty now, scheduled for demolition soon. I parked outside and sat there, engine off, watching the flicker of streetlights across the cracked windows. I thought about that first night we moved in, pizza on the floor, her laugh echoing through bare rooms the way she said, "It's ours." Back then, I believed her. I got out, walked to the front steps, and stood there for a moment. The city around me buzzed with the kind of life that doesn't care about who fell out of love with whom. Full circle, I whispered. Then I turned, got back in the car, and drove away. Halfway home, a song came on the radio. Something slow, melancholic, about leaving and being left. I didn't change it. I just let it play. When I reached my building, I parked, stepped into the elevator, and pressed the button for my floor. The doors closed, and in the reflection, I saw my own face, calm, older somehow. I smiled faintly. Control, I said aloud. Finally mine. As I walked down the hallway, a figure appeared at the far end, Olivia, waiting again. She stepped forward, eyes hollow, smile too steady. We're not finished, she said. You are, I replied. Before she could speak again, the elevator doors opened behind me, and 2 security guards from the building stepped out. One of them looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you need to leave. You're not authorized to be here." She hesitated, then turned to me. This isn't over. It is, I said. You just can't see the credits yet. They escorted her out as she threw one last look over her shoulder. Anger, hurt, confusion, all stitched into one expression. When the hallway was empty again, I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The air felt clean. Outside, her voice echoed faintly in the distance, swallowed by the sound of traffic. Inside, I poured a glass of water, set it beside the cracked photo, and whispered, "We're finally even." And for the first time, I meant it. 2 weeks passed. The world forgot us again. Olivia's scandal was replaced by a newer one, and her face slid down the trending lists until it vanished completely. Online, she'd become a cautionary tale people referenced for a few days, then scrolled past. In real life, she'd gone quiet. No more late-night knocks, no cryptic messages, just silence, the kind that feels intentional. I didn't trust it. Silence from Olivia wasn't peace, it was prelude. So when I got an email from my bank one morning about unusual activity, I knew exactly whose fingerprints were behind it. Someone had tried to access one of my older investment accounts, the one I'd closed months before the wedding. The system blocked the attempt, but the location tag read River North, her neighborhood. I didn't call the police. I didn't call Jeremy. Instead, I decided to make one last visit. Closure doesn't always come to your door. Sometimes you have to walk through it yourself. That Friday evening, I drove across the city, through streets slick with rain and neon reflections. The kind of night that makes everything feel cinematic, too vivid to be real. Her building was one of those minimalist glass towers influencers loved. All views, no warmth. The concierge recognized me immediately. "Mr. Carter," he said cautiously. "Ms. Carter isn't expecting visitors." "Good," I said. "Keep it that way." I took the elevator up. The air smelled like polished marble and denial. When the doors opened, her hallway was dim. Soft music played faintly from behind her door. I knocked once, no answer. Then again. Finally, footsteps. The door opened just enough for her face to appear in the gap. She looked smaller. Her hair pulled back, no ring, no camera-ready poise, just tired eyes. "What do you want, Lucas?" "Honesty," I said. "One last time." She didn't move. "You've had enough honesty to last a lifetime." "Not yours," I said. "Mine." She blinked, wary. "Say what you came to say." I stepped closer, careful not to cross the threshold. "I didn't destroy you, Olivia. You did that all by yourself. I just refused to carry the weight for it anymore." Her jaw tightened. "You think I care about your moral speech? You humiliated me." "No," I said quietly. "You humiliated yourself the day you started believing your own performance." She flinched, like the truth had an edge. "So what? This is your victory lap?" "Call it a conclusion," I said. "I came to tell you I'm done. No more emails. No more leaks. No more you." She stared at me, searching for weakness. "You think you can just erase me?" "I don't need to," I said. "You already did that when you erased yourself." For a moment, I thought she might slam the door. Instead, she exhaled and leaned against the frame. "You'll get bored, you know. You'll need someone to fight again." "Maybe," I said, "but it won't be you." Her eyes softened for half a second. "You really hate me that much?" "I don't hate you," I said. "I just finally see you clearly, and clarity doesn't leave room for hate." She nodded slowly, then said almost to herself, "You always were too calm. It made me feel invisible." "That's because you mistook attention for love," I said. "They're not the same thing." She smiled faintly, a small, weary curve of her mouth. "Good line," she whispered. "Too bad you're not recording." Then she closed the door. I stood there for a few seconds, listening to the faint click of the lock sliding into place. Then I turned and walked down the hall, each step lighter than the last. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirror, the same man, but not the same eyes. Something had settled. Something final. When I stepped into the lobby, the concierge looked up. "Everything all right, sir?" "Perfect," I said. "Better than it's been in years." Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets shimmered with the residue of storms, wet asphalt glowing under streetlights like the city had been washed clean. I walked to my car, opened the door, and froze. There was something on the windshield, an envelope taped neatly under the wiper. For a moment, I almost laughed. Of course. The encore. I peeled it free and sat in the driver's seat before opening it. Inside was a single piece of paper, handwritten in her looping script. "You win. But I hope you know, winning means nothing when no one's left to watch. No signature, no flourish, just that." I read it once, then folded it carefully and set it on the passenger seat. The engine started with a low hum. The city unfolded ahead, lights flickering like tiny confessions. I drove without a destination, Just streets, corners, memories. Somewhere between downtown and the lake, I realized something. She was right. Winning meant nothing, but freedom did. At a red light, I rolled down the window. The night air carried that post-storm chill, sharp and alive. I took the note, held it for a second, then let it slip from my hand. It caught the wind, spiraled once, and disappeared into the dark. By the time I reached the highway, I wasn't thinking about Santorini anymore, or her laugh, or her lies. Just the rhythm of the tires, the endless stretch of road, and the sound of the city finally receding behind me. Somewhere, a new story was starting. Someone else's. Mine had ended exactly where it should. On the move, at peace, no applause, no epilogue, just silence. And silence, at last, was enough.